Howdy my totally always Tubular gamers, we're back with, you guessed it, another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, maybe stick around. We got a fun ranking video for you today. Today I'm going to be ranking all of Rocksteady's games. Yes, Rocksteady Studios, the British game developer based in London, England, most famous for the Batman Arkham series and now the new Suicide Squad game. I thought that today we could take a look at all of their games, give each one of them a little review, and rank them worst to best, see which ones aren't worth playing and which ones are absolute classics. I quite like this studio. I've been following it since the early 2010s as I was very much into the Batman Arkham games, still am very much into the Batman Arkham games, and while it is a shame they don't exactly put out as many quality titles as they used to, I still enjoy what the studio has to offer, and I still hope in the future they can put out some pretty kick-ass games. But today we're going to be looking at all of the games they developed. So for the unfamiliar, that is Urban Chaos Riot Response. Most people probably forgot they even developed that. Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, Batman Arkham Knight, Batman Arkham VR, and the newly released Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. We're going to be stacking these games up against each other, and I'll be sharing my thoughts, feelings, memories, etc. But I'd love to hear yours. Let me know down below what your favorite game by Rocksteady is, or maybe some fun memories you have with the Batman Arkham series. I'd love to hear it. Seriously, I'll be lurking down in the comments. As a heads up, Batman Arkham Origins, Blackgate, and Gotham Knights were not actually developed by Rocksteady Studios, so they will not be on this list. I will not be discussing them, so don't come in here all like, where's Gotham Knights? To tell you the truth, I actually still haven't played Gotham Knights. I haven't really just found a reason to get around to it. But I saw they did just put it on Game Pass, so maybe I'll get around to it. Either way, let me know down below how you are feeling. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. We got the super thanks and the Patreon. Any support is truly and greatly appreciated. Seriously, I very much appreciate you. And if you even made it to this part of the video, thank you. It's awesome that you're here to support me. Let's get right into it. Of these games, which do I think is the weakest? And so here we have Batman Arkham VR, which was released in 2016. Now this game is obviously very different from all of the other games Rocksteady has made, as it is in first person and it is a VR title. The game takes place after Arkham City but before Arkham Knight, and just kind of ties the two games together, but there's nothing crucial or essential to this plot, and it is kind of just filler. But it's cool that they try to tie the two games together and it isn't just some simulation or something like that. When it comes to the gameplay, yeah, very different from the other Arkham games. So you do play as Batman in first person, but I'll immediately say there is no combat in this game. You are not throwing any punches, there's no stealth, nothing at all like that. This is much more of an adventure game, a point and click game, a puzzle game even, that sees Batman exploring environments, investigating, putting his detective skills to work. There are plenty of gadgets to use, there are plenty of puzzles to solve, but really most of the game, all of the game actually, is just investigating areas and figuring out what exactly happened or what's going to happen next. There is some side content with Riddler challenges. You can even do target practice with the Batarangs, but the gameplay is really quite basic in this game. The presentation is nice and it has a good amount of detail, especially for a VR game, but unfortunately, like most early VR games, this game is incredibly short and feels kind of like a tech demo. Like at most you'll get a few hours of this game and it's relatively forgettable. In fact, I usually forget that this game even exists. I played it quite a while ago and it just kind of left my head after I played it, and I think about it every couple years when I want to talk about all of the Batman games or Rocksteady's games, and that's really the only time you're ever going to catch me thinking about it, because again, it is quite forgettable. There just isn't a lot going on here. But it exists, it's a game they made. Do I recommend it? Probably not, unless you're like a diehard Batman fan who wants to try every single game that features Batman in it. Otherwise, yeah, you could skip this one. And so here we have Rocksteady's latest game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now this game, I got a few things to say about it, so we're going to be here a couple extra minutes. Now, I was still decently hyped for this game. Despite the numerous warning signs and red flags, I still had some kind of hype and hope for this game that it was going to be good. I was like, Rocksteady, they've made some pretty awesome games. It still could be okay, but after playing a good amount of this game, I'm disappointed with a number of things with it. Maybe I'm just stupid, but I actually do like a lot of this game. There are plenty of great things about this game, but unfortunately it's held back by a number of issues. This game, in my opinion, is like the very definition of a mixed bag, but it's very easy to see what kind of potential this game had. So to start somewhere, we can start with the story and the premise of killing the Justice League. So it sees Harley Quinn, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot being formed as this Suicide Squad squad, and they all are given bombs in their heads that will go off if they don't comply. Brainiac has taken control of the Justice League, and the only solution really seems to be to just kill the Justice League instead of going after Brainiac. Obviously, there's a bit more going on with this story, but I'm not going to spoil anything, especially with it being a newer game. Now, this might just sound stupid or loony or crazy, but I kinda like the story to this game. Look, the story has plenty of issues, especially the last third of the game. Like, what the fuck? But for the most part, yeah, I kind of like the story, and the reason I do is because I actually like the main 4 characters. They're likable, and most importantly, they're entertaining. Sure, they're all villains and they're all assholes and they don't really grow throughout the game, but they are entertaining the way they banter and go at each other. I found it funny. In fact, I found this game quite funny, and really I found them endearing. Some of the other characters, like Poison Ivy, like really all of the Justice League, yeah, I don't think that was great, and I don't think the League's portrayal was really all that great in this game either, and killing them doesn't really seem to have the big heavy impact or consequences that you would think it does either. And the last third of the game, as I alluded to, But all in all, I still kinda do like the story. I can see why plenty of people don't. Maybe they find the main 4 characters annoying, they don't like the ending or how things end up, and that's perfectly understandable, but I don't know, I just found them endearing for some reason. Maybe it was just because I fell for all this Batman Arkham bait. The game is a sequel to Arkham Knight, and there's plenty of lore, references, nods, etc. to all of the Arkham games, the Arkham world, and I loved all of that, and maybe all of that just kind of clouded my judgment, but the story, I didn't think it was awful. I didn't think the writing was awful, or the characters, for the most part, were awful. Could it have been better? It could have been a hell of a lot better, but it was okay. And that's really what I can say about the gameplay as well. The game actually is decently creative and different with its gameplay. And I wouldn't say it's like this complete disaster that's just awful. No, it is actually competent and has some decent systems behind it. Despite you being 4 very well-established villains with tons of powers, it is a third-person shooter where you have guns. You have guns, you have melee attacks, you have traversal options, and a few little abilities here and there that you use. Depending on which character you choose, it affects what your loadout can be and your traversal option. Outside of that, all of the characters really are the same, and that's something that is a little disappointing. I wish the characters were more distinct from each other, but they aren't totally the same. The traversal, which is a big part of the game, is different for each one. Harley has this grappling hook swinging mechanic that is totally not from Spider-Man. Captain Boomerang throws his boomerang and teleports to it. King Shark jumps all over the place like he's the Hulk, and then Deadshot has a jetpack, and I like these traversal options. I think it's cool, it adds variety to the shooting, and it makes things different from the average third-person shooter, and when you're killing people while using these traversal mechanics, it makes the characters feel a little different from each other, like when you're just flying around as Deadshot shooting stuff, or maybe you teleport behind them with Boomerang and start gunning them down. That's actually different and cool. They also have melee attacks, which you can use to then juggle enemies, which is a nice addition, and the way you get your shield back is thanks to the melee attacks, and the way that's implemented is actually like Doom Eternal, where you have to do some damage to them and then you do a melee attack to basically do a glory kill of sorts to then get your shield back. You don't regenerate health here, and I think it's a decent change of pace, and it actually leads you to killing more and more enemies in sometimes a little bit more creative ways. It's not Bulletstorm or anything out here, but it's more than just the basic shoot everything that moves. You also do have some abilities here, like you can freeze enemies, a big explosion, but nothing too special or anything that honestly takes advantage of the fact of who you're playing as. Despite this though, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I actually kind of like the combat loop in this game. You're jumping all over the place trying to go from building to building, just getting to the enemies, shooting the shit out of them, doing the melee attacks, and there's something about this that, yeah, I kind of actually like it. Don't get me wrong, it's incredibly chaotic, it's crazy, it's all over the place, at times it feels really sloppy, but I actually did have some fun with it. I don't think it's awful. When you're flying all over the place, there's enemies left and right, there's explosions going on, and your teammates are also destroying everything, and you're just running in there, blowing shit up, killing these guys with big guns, and shooting the big purple zits. Yeah, I actually did have some fun with this game. I'm not going to act like I had a lot of fun or some of the most fun I've had in any third-person shooter in the last couple of years. I'm not saying it was that good. It's just, it wasn't terrible. The shooting itself is decent. I like the traversal options. I like the whole idea of you having to chase the enemies down and going after them, and it's not flat battlefields. I like how vertical and dynamic it gets, and there's just something about playing as King Shark, jumping super high into the air like you're the Incredible Hulk and slamming down and then gunning them down with a minigun. Like, it's a good time. I'll be the first to admit though, there are issues with the combat. Sometimes chasing down the enemies, it does get annoying and it can get tedious. Sometimes the traversal can be a bit awkward, and something you'll figure out pretty quick is that a majority of the combat encounters really play out the same, bosses included. So while I did have some fun with the combat loop and there definitely is potential, something I can immediately say that is just a big issue with this game is variety. There's no variety. Every mission is exactly the same. It's just shoot everything. Sure, they'll try to put a twist on it. Defend this car, go save these people, go kill a Justice League member, but trust me, they're all exactly the same. It really is just shoot everything that moves, and all of these combat encounters really can feel the same. There's not enough diverse enemies here. They all just kind of blend into each other, and they all go down the same way, including the Justice League members. The bosses are just horrible in this game. They're just bullet spongy MMO-like bosses. All of the Batman Arkham games have better bosses than this game. This game, the bosses, they're just kind of a joke. They suck. And speaking of sucks, we have all of the looter shooter and live service elements of this game. If this wasn't in here, I would say this game, it's just kind of mediocre, but there's still some fun to be had with it. But these are just not good. The whole loot aspect is really out of place for this kind of game, and I just don't like how it was implemented at all here. And the live service elements, you know what, the less said the better, because I hate this live service shit at this point. Like, this game has a few areas, including the story, that build towards that live service structure where you come back for new seasons and all of that, and I just had no interest in this. I was like, we'll be lucky if we see a season 4 or 5, if we even get that far. Marvel's Avengers was shut down pretty quick. What's to tell you this isn't going to get shut down pretty quick? On top of that, there's that always online bullshit where it just randomly disconnects you from the server because Warner Brothers server sucks and you have to start the whole mission over. Like, why is this here? Why is this always online shit here? It's totally unnecessary, and all of this just drags the game down even further. These looter shooter elements, the live service, the always online shit ruin what could have been, you know, a half decent game. Sure, at times it does get repetitive and feels stale, but I'd still say it was a decent game. But with all this other shit, this is a very middling experience. At least the presentation is actually very good. This game looks phenomenal. Well, when it comes to the character models look phenomenal. The facial animation is really good, and the frame rate was solid. The environments, they look okay. But like shit, even the music was decent in this game. Overall, this game, it really is a mixed bag. I wanted to like it. I really did, and I do like aspects of it. I think it's entertaining. I think the combat loop is interesting, and there is some fun to be had here, but unfortunately it's really bogged down by the live service, always online looter shooter shit. It gets stale, it gets old, there's not enough variety, the boss fights suck, the open world's forgettable, the side content's not very good, and then they want you to come back over and over because it's a live service, and I just don't want to fucking do that. How about that? Like, maybe I'm the wrong demographic. I don't really like live service games. I want a rewarding, complete, fulfilling, engaging experience that is complete from day one. I don't want the usual live service crap where it's come back 6 months later, come back a year later. There's way more story, there's variety, the gameplay's updated, it's a lot better now. I don't want that. I wanted it good day one. This game should not have been a live service title. I am certain it would have been way better if it was not a live service title, if it was just a full, complete experience without the live service, always online, or the looter shooter shit. Gamers sometimes aren't stupid. They can see a live service game that isn't going to make it. I don't think this game is going to make it. A year or two down the line, I don't know if it's going to be online. There have been better live service games that have not made it. Even Marvel's Avengers was low-key better than this, and that game didn't make it. So what hope does this game have? It doesn't. I don't think it's going to make it. I think it's going to be another failed live service game, and it's a real shame because Rocksteady worked on this game for a long ass time, and it should have been way better than what we got. And the user interface should be way better than what we have here. This is a freaking disaster. This is a mess of an interface. Anyway, to finally wrap things up after like 10 plus minutes, I'll just say I wish it was better. I really do wish it was a lot better than what we ended up getting, because this game, it just ain't it. It really isn't. And so here we have Urban Chaos Riot Response, releasing in 2006 for the PS2 and the Xbox. This was Rocksteady Studios' first game, and it was a very late 6th gen game. And it really appears to be one of those games that has just been completely forgotten about. I have not heard like anybody ever talk about this game outside of my boy G-Man Lives. It's never been re-released. It's not backwards compatible with newer Xboxes. Like, if you want to play this game now, you're going to need the original hardware or an emulator. And it's a shame because it's actually a pretty good first-person shooter that is sorely underrated. So the game is an interesting enough premise. You play as Nick Mason. Okay, that's a pretty generic name, but you're part of this newly formed T0 Riot Control Squad. And what you're really trying to do is save people. You're trying to save people in this city that has been overtaken by this gang known as the Burners. And they are, like their name implies, burning everything down, whether it's buildings, people, their lives. It doesn't matter who you are, they're just going after everyone. And so really you're just trying to stop them and save people. And I think it's a pretty decent setup. Sure, it's a bit generic, but it's fine for what it is. When it comes to the gameplay, this is a first-person shooter where you will be gunning down a lot of gang members. You are given a wide arsenal of weapons. They can, of course, all be upgraded. There's pistols, machine guns, shotguns, a riot shield, a taser, Molotovs, grenades. There's a good amount of weapons here, and I'll just immediately say the combat is actually pretty good in this game. The controls are nice, it's really smooth, and the shooting is pretty solid all around. You know, a lot of games that came out during this era aren't the best nowadays when it comes to like how they feel in the shooting, but that is not an issue this game has. It still feels good and it's very satisfying, and it's cool how you can upgrade all the weapons and just blow people away with them. I mean, even the riot shield is pretty awesome in this game. I feel like there's really not a lot of single player games with a good riot shield. I mean, at this point I can't think of any games outside of Call of Duty with a riot shield.
Riot shield. What else? Oh, riot shield. I'm a pussy that use riot shield.
But this game, the riot shield's actually pretty good. You aren't just shooting people the entire time though, you are also helping people, and there's a few segments that are like on rails where you have a minigun. There's a decent amount of variety here. And I thought the pacing was actually pretty strong throughout. I never was bored or ready for the next section. Nothing really dragged its feet. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty decently paced. And I found myself decently engaged really the entire time. This is actually a pretty good first-person shooter. The presentation is solid enough, it looks decent enough, and I didn't really have many frame rate issues. The frame rate does get a little choppy here and there, but it wasn't anything unplayable or just awful. Like, the game even has pretty decent music, and so the real question becomes, well, why didn't this game take off? Why doesn't anybody talk about it? Why does nobody even know really this game exists? Well, when it came out, it was basically considered a last-gen game immediately, but the other thing is, it does look kinda generic. The cover art's generic, and on the surface, it is a generic game, but generic or not, I still think it's actually pretty good. If you like first-person shooters, I think you're gonna enjoy this, or if you like games from the 2000s, you're looking for a different PS2 game that, like, nobody talks about, this is one for sure. This is a hidden gem, not enough people talk about it, and it's the only game Rocksteady has ever made without DC involved, and it's way better than you think. I mean, it made it higher on the list than I anticipated it would, but it's a good game through and through. And here we have Arkham Knight, which came out in 2015. It is really hard to believe that this game came out nearly 10 years ago. I can remember like it was yesterday, going and picking it up, being really excited for it. It was the final game in the Batman Arkham series, and all these years later, this game does not disappoint. Especially graphically. This game, I swear, it was some black magic. I knew it looked really good when it came out, but almost 10 years later, this game still looks phenomenal. Like, it looks crazy good. The character models are really detailed. The environment looks really great. The weather effects go crazy. This is just a phenomenal looking game. So when it comes to the story, this is now not the last game in the Arkham saga, since Suicide Squad takes place after, but it's the last of the main core Batman games and sees Batman going up against Scarecrow, who really unleashes his terror on the city. He's also being helped by this Arkham Knight, and so it's up to Batman to stop them all. And the story, it's pretty great here. I really enjoy the story. There's a lot of interesting twists and turns, and it really is just one of the best Batman stories you can find in any game. It's really good. When it comes to the gameplay, it is very similar to Arkham City. This time though, you have the entirety of Gotham City to explore. It isn't the most alive city, there isn't a ton of civilians or anything like that running around, but it is all of Gotham City here. And like the other Arkham games, you can freely explore, beat up some bad guys, go after the villains, there's plenty of side quests, or just stick to the main story path. The biggest addition to this game is easily the Batmobile. Now, the Batmobile has garnered a mixed response, especially over the last couple years, but I've always thought it was alright. Look, it's not amazing, but I enjoy the Batmobile. Driving around, I think it's pretty cool. You can go pretty fast, and the tank combat, it's decent enough. It does get a little old, but I still enjoy it for what it was. Is it as good as the core combat? No, of course not, but it's different. There's some variety. It's a nice change of pace. When it comes to the core combat, it really is that Arkham combat you know and love. This is maybe the most refined of all of them. There's a bunch of different tools. It feels great, it's satisfying, and it's fun. Of course, you don't have to go into every encounter just fists first. You can actually be stealthy, and there are plenty of instances where you will have to be stealthy, and I think the stealth here is just as good as it's always been. Batman's got a bunch of different tools at his disposal, and I think this is fun also. I like some of the environments you get yourself into, and there's plenty of bosses that actually really rely on stealth. The bosses in this game are good. I wouldn't say they are as good as Arkham City's, and the ones in the Batmobile really aren't all that great, but I still would say they're good. They're certainly better than Arkham Asylum's, I'll give them that. I think the bosses are good for the most part. Something else that I think is really great with this game is actually the pacing, the flow of the game, playing through the entire game. It's not stupid long, it's like as long as the other Arkham games, but it keeps things engaging and interesting like the entire time. You'll really be on the edge of your seat with this game. I remember I was pretty mind blown that like the game was rated M. I was like, holy shit, an M-rated Batman game? This is going to be dark and scary, and this game is. It absolutely is. Scarecrow is actually a really great villain who's been completely realized here. This is like the scariest, darkest, best version of Scarecrow you'll find in like anything Batman related. This game is not messing around. I just think the pacing was really great, on top of such an excellent story. Sure, there is a really predictable plot point in there, but I really enjoyed my playthrough of this game. Do I think it's, the very best of the Arkham games? Well, as you can see where it is on this list, no, I don't think it's the very best of the Arkham games. I do have a few gripes with it. I don't think the side missions are all that great in this game, especially compared to some of the other Arkham games. I don't think the Riddler stuff is as good as the previous games. While I think the Batmobile is tolerable, I don't love it for everything. Some of the side missions with it, I just don't like. Some of the boss fights I thought were particularly disappointing, i.e. the Deathstroke fight, since it is in the tank. I was like, seriously, that was like the best fight of Arkham Origins, and now we're in the freaking tank. And contextually, I will say it doesn't make a lot of sense. But despite all that, if you like the Arkham games, if you like Batman, I have no problem recommending this game. You're going to really enjoy it. It still is a pretty awesome game. And here we have the game that really got Rocksteady on the map with Batman Arkham Asylum releasing in 2009. Now, I very much remember when Arkham Asylum came out and people went nuts. They immediately were like, holy shit, this is the best Batman game ever. This is one of the best superhero games ever. And 15 years later, Arkham Asylum still absolutely whoops ass. So Arkham Asylum is set in a new Batman mythos that was not connected to anything prior, and sees Batman defeating the Joker and taking him back to Arkham, but it's all a trap and Joker takes over Arkham Asylum, and so it's up to him to stop all of his foes. Now, the story, world, and characters of Arkham Asylum are very well done, especially for the time. This is the best they've ever been in any Batman game. Like, I really like how Batman's portrayed here. It's very true to the comics. The world is really interesting, and the villains are great. I love the selection of villains in this game, and Joker is just excellent. And the way the game progresses isn't super predictable, and I actually think it's a pretty good story all around. So when it comes to the gameplay, this is a pretty linear third-person action-adventure game. There are some open areas you can explore, but I would not say this game is an open-world game like Arkham City, Knight, or Origins. You'll be exploring around Arkham Asylum and trying to take out as many of Batman's foes as you can. I'll just get right into it with the combat. The combat in this game was actually very forward-thinking, and so many games have taken what Arkham Asylum established. Like, it's to the point now where I'd say nearly every third-person action-adventure game that has beat-em-up combat can relate back to Arkham Asylum, can owe something to Arkham Asylum. Marvel Spider-Man 2, yeah, they still owe it to Arkham Asylum. Like, there were games before Arkham Asylum that had very similar like combat, but the way it was all put together and how intuitive it is with Arkham Asylum, that's been what's used going forward, where you can do a punch, you can do a counter, and then you have a bunch of tools, and enemies frequently throw some little logo above their heads or whatever when they're about to attack. It's very intuitive, easy to understand, and fun. And the combat, it's still great. It's aged incredibly well, and I've never not had a good time with this combat. It certainly is refined in Arkham City, but it's some of the best combat you'll find in any superhero game still. It's really good, but that's not the only way Batman will attack people or get into combat. There are plenty of foes that show up with guns that he can't attack head on, and so stealth is required here, where you have your grapple gun, you'll be going up on gargoyles and just swooping down and getting people, and the stealth is really great in this game. I actually really do enjoy the stealth. Sure, you have detective vision or whatever you want to call it in this game, where everything turns kind of blue and it's just kind of your win button as you can see everything, but it makes for some really great stealth sequences. Speaking of sequences, we have the pacing of this game, which I think is just awesome. This game has a ton of great segments, set pieces, and just memorable moments. I can recall certain parts of this game like the back of my hand, like when Scarecrow shows up and you go to his nightmare sequence. I've played through this game several times because I really just enjoy playing through it that much. It's a great experience. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it keeps you thoroughly entertained the entire time. I think the pacing is really great. There is some side missions here, but really all it amounts to is the Riddler trophies and some puzzle solving, and I think this is good. It's certainly better in City, but yeah, it's pretty good here. Speaking of the puzzle solving, there is the detective side of things where you got to investigate, and I think this is very good. It's something in Arkham Knight I should have brought up as well, but Asylum's detective stuff, I think it's very good. Presentation wise, the game definitely looks like an Unreal Engine 3 game, but I think it still actually looks very good even nowadays. And I really just don't have any complaints when it comes to the presentation or the story or the characters or really most of the gameplay. There really is a lot to love here, but I do have one glaring issue with Arkham Asylum, and that's the boss fights. I always just kind of groan when I think about the boss fights in this game. Like, they're just not good. None of them are good. They're all super samey and are just really basic. It really just amounts to you fighting even more guys and occasionally beating up some big dude. These are just not good and would be really improved in the sequels. But this issue isn't a deal breaker or anything like that. I'd say maybe 10% of the game is boss fights, if that. So you still got like 90-95% of an amazing game. This game is awesome. It's one of my favorite games of all time. One of the best Batman games of all time. People were popping off then. I'm still popping off now. It's crazy how good Arkham Asylum is and how well it's aged. I have no problem recommending it to really anybody that likes video games. I think most people can like this game. And here we have Batman Arkham City, which came out in 2011. I believe Arkham City is not only Rocksteady's magnum opus, but really the greatest superhero game of all time. Like, this game looks at Asylum, improves basically everything from Asylum. It really beefs up the gameplay loops from Asylum. In fact, they just beefed everything up, and here you have it, one of the greatest games ever made in my opinion. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I've played through this game several times, and it doesn't matter if it's 2011, it doesn't matter if it's 2024, it doesn't matter if it's 2039. I think the game's going to be fantastic. It really is just one of those legendarily good games. Like, I remember when this game came out, I was crazy excited for it, day one purchase, and I played through this whole game in like one sitting then. I was just a high schooler at the time. I didn't have much else going on. I played through this game in like one sitting. I finally beat it, and you know what I did? I booted it up and I played through it all the way again. Yeah, in the span of a week, I beat this game twice, and I wouldn't give that back. I loved my time with this game. I've played through it a few more times since then. It really is one of my most replayed games of all time, and it just holds up every single time. So the game is a sequel to Arkham Asylum, and basically it sees part of Gotham City getting sectioned off and becoming its own little Arkham Asylum where all the villains can roam free and kill each other, I guess, and Batman finds himself in there. And it's up to him to defeat Hugo Strange, who somehow knows Batman's identity and is really the mastermind behind all of this, and there's a bunch more that goes on besides that. I think the story is really good in this game. It's the best Batman story of them all. There's a ton of other characters. They're great. The way Batman is portrayed is great. The ending is really powerful. The villains are great. Like, it's just really good. I really don't have any issues with the story, the world, the characters. Like, it's some of the best storytelling you'll find in any game, and it holds up incredibly well. Like the gameplay, it really does expand on everything from Asylum. The game is way bigger. It is now an open world game, and Batman can do a hell of a lot more than he did in Asylum. Traversal wise, Batman has a hell of a lot more than he had before. You can dive bomb, you can glide wherever you want pretty much, you can grapple all over the place, and it's just got a really fun loop to it. The traversal mechanics are really good. They're simple, but they're still fun. It's probably the best traversal of any Batman game, maybe of any superhero game, but I'm gonna give Spider-Man a little credit on that one. I love the traversal mechanics in Marvel Spider-Man 2. That's some good shit. Anyway, when it comes to the combat, very much expanded on from Asylum. You could do everything you could in Asylum. The combat is that free-flowing combat you know and love. It feels great, it's satisfying, it's intuitive, it's fun. There's a bunch more gadgets and tools at your disposal. Batman's got a lot of moves. You unlock a bunch of new stuff along the way, and I really like the gadgets in this game. In Arkham Asylum, you got some gadgets, and some of them were pretty cool. In this game, you get a lot of gadgets. They're way cooler, and you can do some really cool, crazy Batman shit with it. And it even carries over to the detective mode. I think all of that is really good. The puzzle solving is very solid in this game as well. And then the side content is excellent in this game. There's a lot of side content, more than just the Riddler stuff. The Riddler stuff's great, but the side content, oh, it is all good here. There is nothing bad. You'll want to do do all of it since it's all quality. And the way this game plays out, it's just really great when it comes to the pacing. You thought Arkham Asylum kept things interesting the whole time. This game really does. The intro is fantastic, the middle part's fantastic, and the ending is really powerful. And something that has been significantly improved over Asylum is the boss fights. The boss fights are excellent in this game. They are all very good. None of them are super lame like the first one. No, the boss fights, very good. I really got no complaints there. The stealth is even better than ever since you have more tools at your disposal. There's more variety. The environments are much more varied than the first games. I actually really like the stealth in this game. I think it's one of the best stealth games just ever. I don't really have much to complain about with the gameplay. I think the free flow combat's great. The bosses are great. The stealth is great. The open world is really awesome. I just love how dense it is. And traversing through it is really great. Stealth's solid enough. The game looks and runs really great. Like, this game is a decade plus old and it looks this good. Like, it still looks really good, actually. The soundtrack is excellent. You know, Arkham Asylum and Knight have like decent enough little soundtracks, but Arkham Cities is really good. I'd play it, but last time I played it in a video, WB actually went after me, so I'm not going to play it, sadly. But this presentation, shit, this entire game, it really is as good as it gets. You know, call me a rampant fanboy or my nostalgia bias taking over, but this, in my opinion, really is one of the greatest games of all time and still is the best superhero game ever. It's so good, it's so much fun, it really understands Batman, the lore of Batman. They got everything pretty much perfect. Every superhero game is going to get compared to Arkham City because it's that good. Look, I love Marvel Spider-Man 1 and 2, Miles Morales. Those are great and all, but it's not Arkham City. Arkham City, it really is like the greatest licensed game of all time. It's that good, and maybe I've just been sucking this game's dick for 10 plus years now, but I still love it to death. Rocksteady, they're always going to have a place in my heart no matter what they're putting out. And while I do wish that Suicide Squad was better, maybe in the future we'll get another banger from them. It probably won't be as good as Arkham City, but here's hoping they don't just get shut down. But that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you made it to this part of the video, I need you to comment Clayface because he's a villain in these games, and I just thought of that off the top of my head. So hope you all have a good one. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye now.